like to start this meeting, our first session for 2019. My name is Dr. Jerome Smith. I'll be the president this year. We have 3 new board members, and I'd appreciate it if you could introduce yourselves. Starting off with Steve, and just give us a little brief background.
Thank you. Steve Ortego from the big metropolis of Ball, Louisiana. That's just north of Alexandria and Pineville area. And I'm extremely honored and privileged, and this has been already this morning has been really educational and always intellectually understood, I thought, about what the board did. But now that I'm here and I've gotten a taste of some of it, it's really interesting and challenging, and I look forward to working, helping out as much as I can. Thank you.
Dr. Caldwell.
Good morning. My name is Kimberly Caldwell. I've been in the leadership for about 26 years. I started off as a hygienist, and I have a private practice in Monroe, Louisiana. And just like Dr. Ortego said, I am very honored to be on the board and to be able to serve and be fair. And just thank you for all the privilege.
Dr. Patel.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Jim Patel. I've been practicing dentistry now 17 years. Right out of PPR, did doing removable prosthodontics and surgery. That's all I do in my practice, and love it. Live in Monroe. Been in Louisiana 36 years. Born and raised in London, England. Lived there 10 years, so it was a big culture shock. Moved from London to Bossier City, Louisiana. I am honored as well to serve on this board and do anything I can help and work with anybody here.
Thank you so much. Welcome aboard. Let's go ahead and have a roll call. Dr. Eichhaus. Here. No, you're doing the roll call. So we're not prepared.
No, I didn't know. Jerry Smith.
Here.
Maria LaSalle.
Here.
Glenn Appleton. Present. Don Bennett.
Here.
Claudia Cavallino.
Here.
Jay Dumas. Here. Robert Spray.
Hello.
Patty Hanson.
Here.
Rusty Mayer.
Brother.
Tom Price.
Yeah.
Steve Ortego.
Here.
Kimberly Caldwell. And Chief. Okay. I declare the forum is
As far as opening remarks, I'm looking forward to this year. It's good to see some leaders. I look forward to working with these new board members. We do have some challenges this year. We no longer have an all-maxillofacial surgeon on our board, so it's something that we're working toward. And of course, there's unforeseen things on the horizon as well, but looking forward to working with everybody, and good to have you here. Let's have people in the audience please introduce themselves.
I'm Mike Hay from Ponchatoula. My office is in Hammond, Louisiana. Doctors, thank you all for allowing me to be here to talk in the general comments. Thank you to the Louisiana Dental Association and American Dental Association for attributing to me my 50-year pin of being a dentist in Louisiana. I understand the workings. I have been to state board meetings before in New Orleans. I understand your format. I understand the hard work that you put in on this, and I appreciate the fact that I can be here to speak about some items of which I have concern. I am 74 years old.
Sharon Hayden, wife of this one, and retired school teacher, living in Ponchatoula. Thank you.
Ward Blackwell, Executive Director at LDA.
I'm Phil Renato. I reside in Gonzales, Louisiana, and I'm employed by NYU Langone Hospitals.
I'm Dr. Ken Starling, practicing in Covington. I live in Slidell, Louisiana. I've been practicing 21 years.
Robert Burns with video blog Sound Off Louisiana.
Welcome.
Thank you.
So what do we have next?
Public comment.
Public comment.
Any public comment? Dr. I believe you had some public comments.
Yes, and thank you for that too. And I did have a discussion with Dr. Higgum about this, this week, we had a telephone call about the things about the minutes that are published on your website, State Board of Dentistry's website, where the agenda is published and the minutes are also published. The lag in the time of when minutes are actually put on there. And I'm assuming that's what we're having recorded right now, is at what we all speak and say, which would be under the definition of minutes. We don't get to see that sometimes for 3 months. Once I tracked it, it seemed like it was 6 months later before any minutes were placed to the website. There, with that lag in time, I find that there's no outgoing information to the people that are not in the meeting room as to what actually took place. It's a bit of a disappointment to me, but I can accept that. Doctors, I'm not pressing any more onto you other than what I was told on the telephone conversation, that if I would simply go and read the Louisiana statute on open meetings, that it strictly says all you have to do is say when and where, bam. You don't have to publish the minutes. It leaves me befuddled that here we are, we're a great group of dentists all over Louisiana. 99% of us are all law-abiding and understanding of what we're doing. A very small amount of dentists fall into the realm of having to have disciplinary actions taking place with them. And I understand the workings of the disciplinary oversight committee. I understand that it's convened and then it's dismissed after it finishes its business. I understand that its business is contracted out to companies that handle ones that where there is a complaint of a substance abuse, speaking specifically to either drugs or alcohol. I understand that you have almost no control over that because you've contracted with an outside agency with some initials that you all know that, hospital something another of Louisiana. I'm aware of that. I will not get onto that, but what I'm really concerned about is how do we know what is said in this room? We don't. We just do not know what you're saying because it's not published. It goes through a litany of pre-made, pre-written explanations. One specifically that gets me is the disclaimer that comes about when there's something said behind whatever the disciplinary oversight committee does. And that particular resolution is brought up so many times. Gosh, we all, every one of you here probably has it memorized. I can say it with my eyes closed while I'm brushing my teeth. It's the same year after year after year, telling people that no, there's nothing you can do but accept what the disciplinary oversight committee does. There's no import to it. That being said, I would still like to see things in the minutes. Is there a way to read minutes? I don't know. I'm asking you, doctors. Is there a way that can be done? I'm just appalled that it goes to the point where, is that fair? Is that truly fair to the 99% of the law-abiding dentists that they can't find out what's said in this room? All they know is the topics of it. And I thought this was all democratic, a democracy thing, but it just rises to the point where it's like a monarchical type of situation. You doctors, you're in charge of the whole thing, but you can tell everybody else, no, you can't ask that question, no, you cannot be in that meeting. That's what I'm quite concerned about. And I don't need answers on all that. I need answers on why can we not see the minutes? And why can we not read the minutes of what goes on? Some of these, the last meeting that you had 2 pages. The first page comprised the roll call with everybody in here, everybody's name, and everybody's title. That was 47 words on that first page. The second page was your order of business that was on it, and it was primarily 4 topics that comprised 5 sentences altogether, versus 47 people's names and titles on the first page, and 5 sentences about what went on, and that 5 sentences told nothing. Two of the sentences was that generic, we're going back to non-disclosure. You can't know that because of disclosure and discrimination against the possible discrimination against a dentist. So there's my point. There's nothing in your minutes. Could I be explaining anything about that, doctors?
Minutes typically consist of people who attended and the resolutions and how the vote went. And to the extent that we put anything more in there, we're doing more than we need to. I think what you're at wanting is like a report on exactly what happened during the meeting. That's not required of minutes, as I understand. And the reason that it takes a while for them to be put onto the website is because we do not get them, we don't put them on the website until they've been adopted at the next board meeting. So the minutes from December are going to be reviewed today and adopted, and then they'll go on the website. That's why it takes a while for them to go up.
Dr. Beatty, the minutes, I'm looking at the minutes from the last one, it's 7 pages long. I'm not sure what it is. Do we put the minutes?
The minutes you're looking at are the ones that are going to be approved today.
Right.
And they're not on the website until after they get approved by the board. So there's 7
So
pages.
these 7 pages would be on.
They will be on there after this meeting.
So it's the minutes that we have. Do you get, is it different from that, Doctor?
No.
There's only 2 pages.
I'm not sure what you're looking at.
No, it's not 2 pages. I'm not sure it's things going on with the computer or, I don't know what's happening.
It's way more than that.
Yeah.
I have a copy of that meeting that I'm speaking about.
May I see it?
Yes, you may.
That was the
It was a special meeting. The majority of the meeting was in executive session.
That was the,
Executive session?
Right.
Aaron.
It's the October meeting.
Yeah.
So that was a very short meeting.
That was an emergency meeting.
It was a very short meeting.
It was on
Yeah, it
executive
just lasted 3 hours and 34 minutes.
Dr. Haight, that
But
was.
it was, when we talking about personnel and salaries, that is an executive session and it's not public. And that's what that meeting was. It was on 99% about an employee issue, and it wasn't a general meeting. So that's the reason for it. We don't talk about personnel issues in public. As you would at your office, if you have an employee issue, you would go in your office and talk to them. It wouldn't be something you'd handle in public.
I understand you're on that, Dr. Meyer.
So that meeting was special. That was not a normal board meeting. It was an emergency meeting. To answer that question.
I did, and I've read it the last 2 years of all the meetings.
And the other ones are more extensive.
But even in the 2 years of printing every one of them and reading the minutes, there's not any knowledge. There's not any facts of here is what we did in the State Board of Dentistry wrong. Here is what went on. It's like I say, to me it's almost a monarchy situation where you're saying, no, it's not democratic. Dr. Hibbman, you just quote, it wasn't a quote, but you just explained again to me, and you did that on the telephone day before yesterday, that yes, the state open meetings law says just what you just now said. That's all you have to do is, here's the meeting, come, period. You're not saying anything other than that.
So what do you, I'm confused as to what it is you're asking asking for,
We
because
don't.
if we're following,
No one knows what's said other than this room full of people. And when you get the minutes from
the
this lady to
people that
approve it.
attend the meeting know what's said, and it's open to the public, anyone's welcome to come, and we have visitors all the time. If you're asking for a full transcription of every single thing that's uttered, that's not what the board is required to do. So that would be an extra thing that's never been asked. You're the first person to come in here, at least in my 6.5 years on the board, and ask for that. So if you're, I understand what your concerns are, but if you're looking for broader information to be disseminated to the general public, that's not something that we're required to do. We're following open public meeting rules, and if you want a full transcription of everything that's uttered at the board meeting, then that's a different standard. Am I correct?
Yeah. So, Dr. A, I appreciate your time that you take to come here to talk to us. In the interest of time, you're going to have to move on. I'll take all of your comments under advisement, and honestly, we'll go back and look at the content of the meeting, previous meetings, the minutes of previous meetings, to see if we need to elaborate more than we are. Okay, it's the first request that I'm aware of in my 6.5 years on the board as well. So, thank you very
One
much.
comment, the LDA always shows up, and in the LDA journal, the next time, they always have a thing about what the state board is doing. The board writes an article every time we go to a meeting.
I have that with me, Dr. Meyer, and I'll show you the last one that was printed in the journal, in what's called the journal. It's owned by the Louisiana Dental Association.
Right.
It dedicates a page to the current president of the State Board of Dentistry to give a report. Look back on the last one that was printed, Ward, and it was printed by Dr. LaSalle. It was written by Dr. LaSalle. It has another thing that I would like to speak of, and very respectfully, Dr. LaSalle, to you, that you were doing your job in placing that. You gave it to the Louisiana, you gave it to the journal, which has 3 people as their editors in charge, or their editorial board. 3 dentists in the Shreveport area that read and review that and publish that. That graph that was placed, just what you're talking about, was just incomprehensible. For one thing, there were so many letters used to explain names of things and situations. It touched me as writing in code. It just was a lot of things not understandable, because there's so many initials of what I would call code writing. And why is that? Why can't you just write the whole title to explain to somebody instead of using all these initials? And when I'm on the subject of initials, I'll finally say this. Sometimes you print the names of a doctor in there, and you'll print his first and last name. Sometimes there's an initial, such as a, A period, any letter, A, G period or something, without making a name. There's got to be a rhyme to it. There's got to be
There's an actual
reason to
for
that.
that.
There's a reason to that. But that's code talking, I think. It's hiding something. And it goes back to just what I said in the very beginning. Why can't we be democratic about? Why do we have to be like a monarchy and say, well, you have to accept it or get it?
Respectfully, Dr. Hayes, that, the minutes that were written is, to my knowledge, if you can ask Dr. Hickam, that was last year was my first attempt to disclose the number of complaints that we get each year, the types of complaints, what districts they come out of. To me, that was more detailed than had ever been given before. So, and to get all that information given only one page is very difficult to do. And in that last report, if you go back and read it, I actually pointed out the meetings that our board members attended, such as the Attorney General's meeting, et cetera, which had never been done before. I didn't just pick one topic, opioid usage or whatnot. You know, I try to highlight everything, and I'm only given a page. So the only way I knew how to do it was into a graph. I mean, I don't know if you know, that might not be Dr. Smith's cup of tea, but that was the way that I felt that I was disclosing all the information that we had. How many complaints, from what districts, the types of complaints. And yes, I did assimilate all licensees. I did not break it down between the dental hygienist and the dentist. I mean, we had to save space. So, you know, I'll be more than happy to sit down with you and sit down with Ward and analyze it, and if Dr. Smith wants to be present, and then we can move on, you know, and correct anything that you see. But if anything, I was trying to be as transparent as possible in a one-page thing. You know, I don't know much more I could do, but I'd be more than happy to sit down with you and Ward and Dr. Smith.
Ward, you have a comment?
Just a clarification. Yeah, I do make most of the state board meetings, and we always try to have at least a representative here, and then draft some kind of report for the LDA board. We'll summarize what we see as the highlights, and generally those are posted on the LDA website. They're not reprinted in the LDA journal. And we email a link to our members so they can access the information. But kind of to Dr. Haig's point, we're filtering that to some degree because it's the opinion of myself and the other dentists who will come here to attend the meetings and, you know, make whatever written report we combine to. We filter that to try and assess what we think are the most important things that will be of interest to LDA members. We're not taking an official record of the entire proceedings. So it's, I think, helpful to our members, and could be helpful to you, Dr. Haig, just to see what we report, but it's not necessarily going to be the level of detail I think that you're actually talking about.
I too would second Maria in that I would be happy to sit down and discuss any of the concerns that you have. I think that there is some assumptions being made on your part and some misunderstanding about actual board procedure and procedural rules that we have to follow. So for instance, you just mentioned that in some of the meeting minutes, a dentist's name is mentioned, and in some of the meeting minutes, there's just initials. And your implication, or at least what I perceived, was that there's an intent on the board's part to be secretive or not be transparent. That is not the case. When you see a dentist's initials, it's because it's regarding a consent decree disciplinary matter that was handled in executive session. Each licensee has the option when they're coming in front of the board in executive session as to whether or not they want their disciplinary matter handled in the public open session for anybody to hear about it, or if they want it handled in executive session behind closed doors where it's not open to public meetings rules. Most licensees choose to have that done in executive session, and therefore we honor their wishes and their requests. So when we come out of executive session and a vote is taken about a consent decree, ratification or amendment or whatever, that's done at the licensee's request, and we have to obligate. We have obligations to follow that. So I think that's just one example of that. You know, we're not trying to not be transparent. We're trying to follow the rules and do what the licensee is requesting. So I think
we're going to have to move on. We're going to have to move. We have a distinguished dentist from Baton Rouge. Could you introduce yourself, please?
Oh, hey. Thank you, Jerry. I've never been introduced as distinguished. I'm Marty Garrett from Baton Rouge. Thank you for having me.
So moving right along, I need to ask for an approval of the minutes from the annual board meeting of December 1st, 2018.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Next on the agenda, confirmation of action decision taken by board officers next executive direction since the last meeting, including confirmation of per diem requests since our last board meeting. Anybody have anything?
I make a motion to accept
favor? Opposed?
Is anyone having trouble connecting to the internet?
Yes,
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to start off with our standing committee reports, licensing and credentials committee. Ms. Patty Hanson.
Thank you, Dr. Smith. Good news is a short report. I need a motion to ratify the temporary license of the hygienist as listed. On page 9 in your books, you have a list. There's only 4. And everything is everything's fine. Aaron has gone over them. Nothing's missing. Everything is approved.
I make a motion that we ratify those or approve those licenses.
A second.
All in favor?
And then I need a motion to issue the full licenses on the other 3 that are listed there also on page 9. And same. Make a motion to accept.
Second? Do you have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
And then it's listed that it's on page 13 and 15 in your books, but there are actually extra papers here that are printed that have the 2 lists of licensees. The one page is the hygienist, and then the other 2 are listed as a dentist for non-payment. This is list to revoke their licenses for non-payment.
And what procedures have taken place?
Well, I sent out an email in December to those people who had not yet renewed, and then I sent, the deadline, of course, was December 31st, and I sent an email to those people who had not renewed in February, and I followed that up with a certified letter to each of them.
So did these include those that have responded back negatively, like they don't want to renew their license?
Yes. If they told us, hey, I'm just not allowed to lapse for non-renewal, they're on here as well. Now, if they told us they wanted to retire it, that's not this. These are just people who are just allowing it to just go. Usually, a lot of times they're out of state, they don't feel like keeping up the license.
So are there any on these lists that you were not able to contact at all?
I was able to contact everyone that had an email address, and the certified letters all were received as far as I can recall.
So then I need a motion to accept these 2 lists. Can we do them together, or do you want a motion?
Together.
Okay, so motion.
I make a motion.
And a second.
All in favor? Opposed? The ayes have it.
And then also, motion to approve the minutes of the licensing credential committee meeting, which was held on November 30th.
They're on page 10.
I make a motion.
I second.
All in favor? Opposed? Moving right along. Office Management Committee, Dr. Glenn Appleton.
Thank you, Dr. Smith. We had our meeting this morning, and I wonder if Dr. Hickman, our executive director, wants to talk about the financial statements.
All right, so the way we get quarterly financial statements from our accountants, this one, the most current one, goes from the beginning of our fiscal year, which would be July 1st, through December 31st. During that 6-month period of time, we're running a nice surplus, $54,000. Everything else is, seems to be pretty much in order. We're on track. Dr. House wanted me to mention, if you look at the financials, there's something called the net pension liability. It's on page 14. It's $1.6 million. That's a liability that the state gives us that number. What it represents is our share of the amount that the state pensions are underfunded. We pay into the state pension for our employees, and the state pension is underfunded. And like I said, the 1.6 million is our share of that. What happens is every year the state gets together and comes up with a percentage of all state employee salaries that is going to be paid into the pension fund. And it changes every year. And they've been increasing it to try to bring down this $1.6 million liability. Over the years, theoretically, that should disappear, but I would think it would take many, many years. But in any case, it's not, it's a liability that is a liability, but it's not something that we're gonna have to pay tomorrow or something that, it does put us into the red. But like I said, it's something that gets paid down over years. So are there any questions about the financials? No, we don't need any motions to approve those.
Third item was to review the online review results.
Yeah.
This is just a little standard review. We have 2,073 people were new this year. Vast majority of those were done online. I'm sorry, 2,136 people were new. And of that, 2,072 were new online. There is we only had 63 were new paper, so less disease tend to like it online. It did get a rush as a new one, I said that first. So, that was nice. We're in line with previous years.
We have another member of the audience that's just walked in. Could you introduce yourself, please?
Yes, sir.
Another distinguished guest.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Bill Hadlock from Baton Rouge, and I'm the LDA's liaison to the board meeting. Sorry to be late.
Welcome. You done with that? Yep. Okay. So we'll move on to rulemaking committee, Dr. Don Bennett.
I have no report this go around. We may be addressing the issue with digital impressions again this year. See if maybe we can come up with a resolution, but no report for today.
Thank you. Legislative committee, Mr. Albert Bossier.
Rusty has drafted some legislation that's been proposed. I'm going to let him fill you in on that, and he's also arranged to have it sponsored at the next session. And it deals with the need for an oral surgeon on the board.
So we lost both of our oral surgeons, and we currently don't have an oral surgeon on the board. As you all know, that it's really important for us to have an oral surgeon on the board, because one of the things that we do is we approve anesthesia permits, and the oral surgeons have a lot more experience with anesthesia than regular general dentists. So we wanted to, Dr. Smith and I talked about what to do about it, and we decided that we would make one of the at-large seats, when it becomes vacated, into a seat that is going to be reserved for an oral surgeon. So I drafted it, it was at-large seat C. If this bill passes, would be going, once it becomes vacated, would be a seat just for an oral surgeon. I talked to the governor's office and asked if they could find somebody to help sponsor this bill for us. And I also talked to the LDA and the Oral Surgery Society to ask. The Oral Surgery Society found someone named James Z. Zerang to sponsor the bill. And the governor's office found someone, Representative Cheney, who is married to Sharon Cheney, who's the head of hygiene at ULM. So when Representative Cheney called, I said, well, look, we already have somebody to sponsor the bill, Representative Zerang. And he said he'd call Representative Zerang, and he's going to offer to co-sponsor with Representative Zerang. In any case, it looks like that's going to be moving forward in this next legislative session. I've talked to the LDA about whether they would oppose it or not. And I'll let Ward speak for the LDA. I think he's going to vote on it at April 6th. House of Delegates.
Yeah. The LDA Council on Government Affairs, and I apologize, I'm getting over some bronchitis. LDA Council on Governmental Affairs had a conference call, and they took up the issue and referred it to the House with a favorable recommendation. So the House meets April 6th. I would expect they'll either support or at least not oppose. I'm not hearing anything that suggests there's going to be a lot of problem with this. I will say the bill has dropped. It's HB 69. Showed up the other day in the hopper. And if I recall correctly, it only had Representative Cheney's name on it. Oh. I don't know why. Got me?
No question? If the position is already filled, I mean, it's already oral surgeon as a regular way, is it still mandated at that position?
Yes.
What was the house code number? 69?
I received a phone call from current LDA President Danny Weaver, asking or just relaying basically what Ward just said, that information. And he wanted me to convey to board members that just kind of remind you how the process works for those of you who haven't been to LDA House of Delegates. He wanted me to explain that you have this legislation that's been voted on or approved favorably or supported favorably, I guess, or jump in if I'm misstating here, by the Council on Governmental Affairs and the LDA Board. But ultimately, it's up to the House of Delegates to approve, and at which point the LDA will then officially acknowledge that they approve of this. If the House of Delegates should, for some reason, vote that they don't approve of this legislation, then the LDA is obligated to abide by whatever that vote is. And so Dr. Weaver thought that this was, as Ward mentioned, not controversial, with merit, which is why the CGA and the full board, were completely in support of it. But he did want me to point out that sometimes at delegate meetings where you have delegates that are very new members, maybe young, haven't been to a meeting before, don't always have a full understanding or scope of all the issues being voted on and all the intricacies. He said that he thought it would be a good idea that if board members got any phone calls or questions from their respective caucuses or component districts, just to basically explain to them why this came about and how the anesthesia committee works, that it's not just about anesthesia permits, but it's also about anesthesia and sedation deaths and adverse events. So, specifically, we just got one this week, and it would be very helpful if we had an oral surgeon on the board to review that. Also, just for informational purposes, if you get asked, if we don't have an oral surgeon on the board who does those kinds of duties for free, we would essentially have to use board dollars to consult with or hire an oral surgeon in certain cases where you just absolutely need their expertise. So I know last year we had a couple of cases that absolutely wouldn't have been able to be investigated or resolved without the expertise of the oral surgeon. And if we have one of those such cases this year, we're going to have to hire someone or contract with someone. So those were the points that he wanted to make sure that delegates understood. So if you get phone calls from delegates in your district.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Correct myself, pardon me for the senior moment. It was actually Representative Zarang, who authored the bill. Representative Cheney is not on. Okay. He's not at this point. Sorry.
One of the things I emailed Aaron and Rachel and Rusty about is when we have a board member and they serve in a partial term, now that we have term limits, it would be nice to have that person start on their term, their first 5 years. So my question would be to Ward and Rusty is there any way that we could, the legislation to include, like someone took over my part of my term, and so they fill out that 2.5 years or 2 years, then they have to go get reappointed, then go through that process. And at points during the board, we just have 4 new board members in a short period of time. So it would be nice to have, when someone starts with the board and they're approved by the Senate, them have the full 5 years. You see what I'm saying? Instead of having 2.5 and then have to go back up against, I think it happened to Dr. Dumas, it happened to me. It would just be nice for that board member. And that wasn't an issue before we had term limits. And that was what, at the previous board meetings, Dr. Marks was trying to address, although it was not, he did not convey it that way, and it was not perceived that way, and that's why I didn't object to the minutes. But that's where he was, when he mentioned the terms, that's what he was discussing. when someone has a partial, it would be nice. He wasn't trying to change the 10-year term limit. He was trying to change when someone is accepted and approved, then they get a full 5 years. Does that make sense? So, my question is, could we clean it up a little bit? I think it would be better for this body if someone was able to, because what happens if they come in at 1 year? It takes several months to get a new board member, and then by the time they get appointed, then they're up for reappointment again. So I don't know if it's too late or what have you, but if you could look at it, it might be beneficial to this board and the state.
I'll talk to Dr. Smith about it.
Good, good. Examination committee, Dr. Rusty Mayor.
First thing is CETA is to come along pretty well next weekend. I don't know who's going. I'm going to the CETA test. It looks like half of us are going. A plug for the new members. This year is too late. But one of the responsibilities of the board is the test, the ADEX test through CETA at dental schools. I would recommend everybody on the board do at least a couple of tests to get their ideas about how it works. So sign up for the CETA process sometime at the end of the year. You have to take an extensive online course, and it's scheduled. They have dental tests all over the country, basically. But I would recommend everybody do want to see how the process is. And there's another test in May. The second thing is, I have to apologize, I had tickets and reservations to the CETA board in Phoenix and for the Southern Deeds course, but because of my wife's accident, I'm unable to make it. So does anybody go to that they can give a report?
Well, I went, but I don't know if we'd rather have reports. Continuing on with, there's another testing agency that's going to cease operations, and that is CERTA. CERTA is going to be kind of disappearing from the landscape of testing agencies. There's 5 testing agencies. There have been many more than that. It's just kind of got fewer and fewer. And so there'll be 4, and most of the examiners that were examining the CERTA have been approved to do some testing of CETA as well. So we're kind of merging those together. It's good for the dental schools because they don't have to give as many examinations. It's good for the public because we can make sure we have enough doctors that are licensed in each state. It's a regional, well, it's almost a nationwide exam, an ADEX exam. So CETA is the one that we use. We approved an ADEX exam, and CETA is that testing agency that administers. There's another one that administers ADEX exam. Also, we accept those results from that testing agency too. But we're moving more towards a national exam a little at a time as the landscape changes. But this should be done and completed by the end of this year. That organization will cease to exist, and CETA will be one of the 4 of them.
And that came out of the CETA meeting?
Well, that's just ongoing. We've been about a year going through it, but so now we're getting closer to it. We were in talks last year. This year, it's finishing up. So.
And just to let everybody know that the end goal, I think, of everyone on the CETA board, I'm talking for everyone, is to have a national test. Right now, I don't think anybody really likes the fact that we have more than one test. So CETA ADEX is given in 48 states, or accepted by 48 states. If we could get over the hump and just make it universal, I think everyone in dental school would be happy to take one test and be good everywhere, as opposed to like, well, it's not good in Georgia, and it's not good in Kansas. It's kind of silly, but if we get to that point, I think that's our end goal.
Clarification for the new board members who might not know how all that works. I don't know how much y'all know. Louisiana is a member of CETA, which is a testing agency. Several states are members of CETA, and CETA gives a test. They give the ADEX test. ADEX is a testing protocol, and it's given by CETA, but it's also given by at least one other testing agency. Louisiana accepts the results of ADEX regardless of who gives it. CDCA gives the ADEX test. We're not a member of CDCA, but if somebody passes ADEX that was given by CDCA, we accept it. And as Dr. Meyer said, I believe ADEX is accepted by 47 or 48 jurisdictions. There's still some that do not accept it.
Jean and I were in dental school at the same time back in the dark ages, and we had to take the Louisiana clinical licensure exam. That was good in one state. And if you wanted to go elsewhere, you took every other state's licensure exam. That has changed drastically in 15 years, and the goal is to have one single national clinical licensure exam. So right now, Louisiana, the exam that they do accept is accepted in, I think, 45 or 48 states. So they have changed a lot since.
Not state, jurisdiction, because we do Puerto Rico and Jamaica, and Virgin Islands. And the other question people get related to that is credentialing has changed so much in the last 20 years. If you're in good standing in another state for 2 years and you want to come here.
3 years.
3 years. Well, but it's pretty automatic.
Right.
Back in the day when I got to school, it was hard to get a license anywhere. Now it's just the paperwork there. And so it's much easier to move around, which I think is one of the goals of the ADA and with the ADA, LDA say so, it's one of their goals.
Keep ASTA happy.
Thank you.
Can I add one more thing before we move on? That's just for the new members real quick. If y'all would like to come and observe the CETA exam, I'm sure, well, Dr. Waterville will be there. He's actually going to be working at it. But, you know, if at any time you want to come and observe, I'm sure we can make that happen at the CETA exam. It just happens to be very close next week, but the next one at LSU will be in May. It's a lot of work, but it's fun. It's a great group of people, so we will. Okay.
That's it. Did anybody go to the AADB meeting?
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, can somebody give a report on that? It's in my list here.
The AADB at the moment is undergoing some issues within the board of directors. The president and the boards are a little at odds in the direction of how he wants to take things in. So they're trying to work things out amicably so that everybody can get moving in the right direction again. They dismissed their executive director in October, November, maybe November. So anyway, they at this point there is no new executive director for the AADB. I think they're trying to resolve the differences between the board and the president before they hire an executive director. Otherwise,
Received some emails about kind of the ouster of the president somehow?
well, they're as I mentioned, they're at odds right now, and they're trying to work that out amicably. There are some people who are rather vociferous in their desire to see him resign and move on. And he does have the backing of others, so it's a little bit contentious at the moment, but they're trying to work it out.
We did meet with the mediator, and we're trying to see what we can do and get this fixed. They are looking at an interim executive director right now because we feel like if we can at least get somebody in that office in Chicago, it would help, with how much the president is having to do instead of being the executive director and the president of the organization. So we're trying to work that out. But the CE meetings, were interesting. A couple of the topics were on marijuana, because in some states, that's legal, and they were looking at that not just from the standpoint of the patient, but also from the clinician. Might be an issue in some states where that's allowed. Of course,
They had a little bit on substance abuse protocol and how different boards handle that. And, we contract with the FQHC.
HPFL.
CIA.
Yeah. So anyway, there was just some discussion about how other states handle it. We fall in line largely with what a lot of the other states do.
And of course, Dr. Cole was there from the ADA, and ADHA, ADA, and ASTA, of course, just trying to keep those communications open and everybody working together.
For the new board members, the AADB is the American Association of Dental Boards. It consists of board members from around the country and some executive directors as well. And we meet twice a year.
still some discussion about whether to adopt the BOD, which is going to a national exam, not a patient-based, but a management-based exam. So that's the ADA is pushing out.
So they're pushing that.
Not the AAD.
The ADA.
ADA and ASDA and ADIA are all in support of doing away with the live patient licensure.
So that, of course, nothing has happened yet.
Okay, next, anything else? Anesthesia committee, Claudia, Catalina?
I don't think we have anything to report.
Just the minutes.
Just the minutes. So can I get a motion to approve the minutes from the anesthesia committee meeting on November 30th?
Unless you want to do what we did talk about earlier, the joint CE. I don't know if you want to do that at the same time with CE or if you want to handle it separately. Probably better.
I think under number 13,
Okay.
CE, it's actually listed over there. So, I will, do we have a motion to ratify those?
I make a motion.
All in
Any
favor?
discussion? All in favor? Opposed?
I will say, just for a point of information, since Brian has restarted his new cycle of inspections, he continues to get questioned, as do I, as the current anesthesia chairman and Dr. Willis before me. There still seems to be a lot of members, licensees around the state that do not know the current rules as it relates to capnography and EKG. So when you're at your district meetings, when you're at, whatever functions you're at with colleagues in your component, you may get questions about that, even though they've been on the books now for a couple of years. Some dentists with sedation permits still don't know that. Even though they've been emailed and notified and emailed and notified and LDA journal and emailed and notified some more, just.
Can we put something on the website? I know it's already on the website, but can we do another page or a link?
Sure.
Just that, and make it as simple as possible.
For y'all.
I'm sorry, KJ. Yeah.
If you have a
I mean, I know
moderate
it's
sedation
there.
permit, you need to have an EKG, and you need to have a CO2 monitor, and you need to have an IV setup. Those are some of the things that people are confused about. You do need to have those. You didn't always need to have those, but now you do need to have those, even for moderate, not just general. You need to have moderate.
And if you could notify us, Aaron, when it's up, then when you get those questions, we're going to the website.
Good. Okay, next, impaired dance committee, Dr. Robert Foray.
There is no report today. Dr. Hammond's not here. I thought maybe his representative was.
He told me that Dr. Hammond told me that a representative was going to come, but I don't see a representative from the HPFL here today.
Nothing's changed.
Yes, sir.
Could I ask one other question? I'm probably
Sure.
to direct this. Well, it's concerning the impaired dentist committee. However, without that, let me ask this to Dr. Hickman. At the Louisiana State Board of Dentistry level, when a dentist has agreed to sign this consent or understands that he has violated the Dental Practice Act, and that's recorded naturally with our group, the Louisiana State Board of Dentistry. If a dentist holds licenses in other states, does Louisiana State Board of Dentistry automatically notify the other state that we have sanctioned something? A dentist here has been sanctioned for this particular infraction, or is the information only kept in this group, the Louisiana State Board of Dentistry? Can a dentist with multiple state licenses be sanctioned here and suspended, yet still go to another state and practice dentistry? That's what I'm asking.
When the State Board of Dentistry sanctions somebody, they sign a consent decree, or we issue an order after a formal hearing, we report it to the National Practitioner Data Bank. The National Practitioner Data Bank then reports it to all states where the dentist has a license. So we frequently get reports from dentists who are licensed in this state, or sometimes get reports from dentists who are licensed in this state but practicing in other states saying they've been sanctioned. So when we get something like that, we look into it on our own as well.
I understand, that makes me feel much better.
The answer is yes to your question.
Pardon?
The answer is yes to your question.
Yes.
We notify the world.
Notify the world, notify the world. Thank you. How does a dentist, and specifically me, how do other than writing a letter to the HCPF, that's the Healthcare Professionals Foundation that you have contracted to do business with, how would I look at the complaint that I filed against a lawbreaker of the Dental Practice Act? Where do I go outside of this room to get an answer?
The only thing
do I have to write to John Bell Edwards, or where do I start?
The only thing that is public in disciplinary proceedings, the only thing that's public is if there is a final outcome where the dentist is sanctioned. If a dentist has been reported for substance abuse, and we refer them to the HPFL, for the experts at the HPFL to check out, then that is not public information, even if you're the one who filed the complaint. If that dentist fails to do whatever the HPFL tells him to do, for instance, if the HPFL, if the physician who's the addictionologist meets with them and feels that they're not safe to practice dentistry, and tells them, you need to stop right now practicing dentistry, if they don't do that, then the HPFL comes back to the board, and the board will take the license away. At that point, it becomes public. But if they cooperate with the HPFL and they get better, they get healed, then it never becomes public.
And again, maybe, and I'm sorry, I apologize for taking up all your time on this, but this has weighed heavily upon me for about 10 years of what I've had to put up and endure in my practice in the town where I am, and where there's a violator of the Dental Practice Act. But with the ACPF, how would any dentist contact them and say, you have made a mistake? Would you explain to me my reasons for thinking that you have made a mistake in giving your report back to this great organization, the Louisiana State Board of Dentistry? You accept their report as being the verbal, the factual thing. You don't get involved in the investigation. You pay money to that company and you accept their report. What if that report is incorrect? What if there's fallacy in that report? What if there's gross negligence in that report?
If the report's incorrect and the dentist feels like it's incorrect, the dentist can always not comply with what the HPFL suggests they do.
I'm sorry, Dan.
You're talking about if you don't agree with
I'm talking about the person who filled out the complaint,
right,
not the lawbreaker.
Right.
I'm not talking about the lawbreaker of the Louisiana Dental Practice Act.
Right.
That person is committing a crime.
Right.
I am talking about the complaint form that's on our website, your website, to turn someone in by writing a formal complaint of a violation of the Dental Practice Act.
I think, Dr. Hayes, what you could do is, like, from the time of complaint, say you filed the complaint in June 1st, and then you saw some subsequent violations, it would be the subsequent violations that you could file a secondary complaint.
That's not what you're talking about.
But he could do that. I mean,
He's talking about if he doesn't agree with the report that's submitted by the Physicians Health Foundation, if you don't agree with it.
Correct. Yes. Dr. Smith.
And what's that based on?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked me that. Yeah. That is based on the fact that the material that this board sent to that company, the Healthcare Professionals Foundation of Louisiana, that my complaint with my name on the letter was left on, and I got this from the person that the complaint was made. That letter was left open on a table there, and my letter of complaint was read by the person who I made the complaint against. The letter was left in the open to be read. You wouldn't do that. If you were doing that in your committee, there would be no way that you would do that. Yet, this was done in your outside company, which you pay a lot of money for them to be contracted to do. Think if it's only one time. What about the physicians? I don't just think about the dentist. What about the physicians? That sometimes somebody did something wrong over there, and well, here I am telling you the story.
Did you spoken to them about that?
Yes, yes, I have, and I have it in quotations too, and I'm glad you asked me that too, because the quote from the dentist with the complaint against him was this: "You," meaning Michael Haight, "you cost me $3,000 to go through this, yet when I came out of it, she said that I was fine, I passed with flying colors.
But my question is,
And also, I came out smelling like roses."
I read that.
Yeah.
But my question is, have you spoken to the Health Foundation about this?
No, sir, I have not. I'm asking you, should I go there now?
That would be my recommendation. That's an issue really between them and the person who broke the law. And if they did, in fact, allow your information to be divulged to this person to file the complaint, I can appreciate, how you feel about it.
And it was done that way.
Yeah. So I think
It
the
was
issue,
confirmed by 3 witnesses.
so the issue really is you need to take that up with them.
And I would include.
Well, I'm just
include
letting
Dr.
you know
Flora.
that your company is not perfect.
Sure.
Right, and I would include Dr. Flora because he's the impaired dentist chair. So I would include Dr. Flora.
Yes.
Dr. Hay, was this a recent occurrence?
2018, I filed
This is
a
the first I'm
complaint.
hearing of it, that's what I was just thinking.
I filed a complaint in April of 2018 after I had endured this violation for over 8 years, and also encouraged the family to do interdiction processes to stop what was going on. The letter is very self-explanatory, and the complaint form, I'm sure, is still in files. You doctors can easily have that to look and read. It's weighed heavy on me, it really has. I mean, it really has, for me to have to go through that. Lamar Advertising turned me down because I wanted to put it on their electronic billboard, but that wouldn't happen.
Thank you.
I have a question. If a patient makes a complaint to a dentist about something else, doesn't the dentist have a right to know that complaint?
Typically, yes, yeah.
So in this scenario, the dentist doesn't have the right to know who's complaining?
We do not typically, if it's a patient complaining against a dentist,
Yeah.
then we send a copy of the complaint to the dentist and ask
Right.
for him or her for a response.
And that's 99% of it.
Right, right. If it is someone complaining about a dentist with substance abuse, then we send the letter, the complaint, to the Healthcare Professional Foundation of Louisiana and let them handle it.
But that's private then?
And it is
They should
private.
not know the name of the complaint?
Well, there's no rule that says they can't know the name, but we don't contact the person the only thing we tell the dentist against the complaint was filed was, hey, you need to go to the HDFL. We don't send a copy of the complaint to them. But there's no specific rule that would prevent them from seeing the complaint. We don't have to turn it over.
But I beg to add to that, Dr. Hickman, the person that I filed the complaint against read my letter on the desk in that health.
And what I'm saying is there's no rule.
He read my letter and
There's no rule
recognized my
against it.
signature.
There's no rule against it, against them seeing it.
That's not against the law.
Yeah.
It's just bad practice, but it's not illegal.
Right.
Go ahead and keep paying their fee.
Well, what we'll do is if Dr. Hammond was here today, unfortunately neither he or his representative is here, we certainly could open that up for discussion.
I would think in most cases it would be best, not if you could avoid it, not to divulge the name. Sometimes you have to. Sometimes it's obvious because frequently the complainant is somebody who's in the dentist's office.
Or an ex-spouse.
Or an ex-spouse. And so there are times when we have to divulge, the name has to be divulged. But I think in general they should avoid doing that. But again, we leave that up to the HPFL. I don't know if this is a case where they felt like it needed to be divulged.
Can I have a comment on that now?
He's not here.
He's not here.
I'm sorry, I thought you were not here.
No, that's why I would love to address this, but I think it's gonna unfortunately have to be addressed either in between now and the next meeting or after next meeting.
Dr. House.
Dr. Hay, can you appreciate then, just in this discussion, that you didn't want your information divulged, but yet you're complaining that the information is not being divulged? Sometimes this information is confidential, sometimes it's not. It's a tricky task to determine what should be divulged and what should not be divulged. And we're not trying to be secretive in any way, but sometimes there's sensitive information, as you yourself have acknowledged. So that's I believe some of the issues that you're dealing with. If you want to know more about the state board and its workings, you should come to the meetings. They're open. And also, Rusty Mayor, I believe, is that you're in Rusty's district, Dr. Mayor. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So you can always get with your board representative and ask your questions to him. He's at the meetings. He could talk with you more specifically.
Yes, but when I asked was the disciplinary oversight committee going to meet, could I come into that room and speak? I was told no, I could not. But there's a technicality, though, they said that is dissolved each year and reconvened.
No, it's up to each individual person who is being investigated. They can decide whether or not they'll want the public or any other body, your dentist or anybody else to come in there or not. It's not up to you or me or anything else. It's the DOC. It's up to the licensee who's being investigated.
No disciplinary oversight committee was convened in this case because we referred to the HDA.
Exactly. That's
But to your
that's what
point,
he told me, yeah.
To your point, to have your name discovered on that letter and wanting to keep that confidential, that complaint confidential, doesn't really,
Yeah,
it's not a good thing.
needs to be followed up.
And it sounds like they made a mistake.
Yeah.
So that I wish that Dr. Hammond was here so we could address it, but we'll follow up with him on that. Okay, next.
Thank you.
Continuing Education Committee, Dr. Ike House.
Well, we discussed, is this going to be regarding the things that we talked about in our CE committee meeting today, correct? The joint CE and CE. So it just so happens that everyone on the board was in that committee, public committee meeting. I believe, is that correct?
No.
Everybody said who was not. You were not here?
Me and Maria.
All right, I was going to say, we dispensed with a lot of discussion that way, but, so there were two items that were discussed in that meeting. One was regarding requested changes by LSU CDE department regarding nitrous oxide methodology, I guess requirements for the permit, people to become licensed to administer nitrous oxide, as well as the CE requirements and how they could be, whether they would be live or online as far as some of the didactic studies. And out of that meeting, we came to a recommendation that, maybe Rusty, you have some specific language about the changes that we want to make.
They want to, the current rule for if you want to get a permit to give nitrous oxide in your office, you have to do 16 hours of didactic training on nitrous oxide and have clinical experience. There's no specific number attached to the clinical experiences. The ADA guidelines are the same as the board's guidelines, except the ADA says 14 hours of didactic plus clinical experience. So the LSU Continuing Education Department came to us and said, this is our course. It would be much easier. 16 hours is really more than we really need to teach these people how to do nitrous oxide. 14 hours would be better. And so the committee, I think, decided, let's go with change our rule to comport with the ADA guidelines, 14 hours of didactic, but we also want to specify you have to do 6 live cases of nitrous. And also, we want to specify that the dentist and the hygienist can give nitrous oxide permits. The hygienist course needs to be the same as the dentist course with the same amount of supervision, because prior heretofore, hygienists could go take a course and do the didactic part, do one case in at the school, and then go to a dentist's office and do 5 cases under the supervision of just any dentist who they happen to be working with. So the committee felt that all 6 cases should be done by the dentist and by the hygienist at the dental school.
That wasn't unanimous.
No, it's not unanimous. It was not unanimous.
Because I think that you can do it, the hygienist can do it under a licensed and certified dentist at their office.
So that's correct. It was not unanimous. Dr. Meyer did not like that part. So what we need is discussion on whether we want to adopt a new rule to where changing the requirement from 16 hours with some clinical experience to 14 hours of didactic with 6 live cases, and the dentist and the hygienist courses have to be the same with the same amount of supervision.
Let me also, just for information for those who weren't in that meeting, this affects a relatively small number of dentists, because most dentists come out of dental school already having a certificate, having graduated from a quota accredited dental school, to already be able to administer nitrous. So this would be someone maybe who didn't complete that requirement in dental school. It would be a very small percentage of dentists. In the hygiene world, it would be, I think, mostly hygienists from other states where that's not part of their curriculum, or hygienists that graduated before it was part of the national accepted curriculum. So it's essentially just about, I think, 1 course a year that they offer, and I think they said at the last course it was about attendees from 30-something people.
Yeah, 30-something and 18, like that, 14, 24, something like that.
Dentists and hygienists, and so we just felt that the standard should be the same regardless of who's administering the nitrous. Rusty.
Turn it on.
Come on. That the standard should be the same, those of us, other than Dr. Meyer, that the standard should be the same for hygienists and dentists, and that we should follow the ADA. Let's make it consistent with the ADA teaching requirement, education requirement.
Is there any other discussion that we need to have regarding this potential change? Hearing any, then I would ask for a motion that we approve the rule change. Second. We have any motion?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Please have it.
The second thing that
All
was
opposed?
Oh.
It's okay. I don't know opposition.
You're going to abstain?
The second thing that was discussed regards live CD and what requirements are required for coursework to be considered live as opposed to online or remote. And there's a category of CD that involves a live course being given at, for example, LSU, that's attended by live participants. It's lectured to by a live lecturer, but to the person, because they're further away, maybe I think it's over 120 miles away, they allow them to attend virtually online. There's a series of checks that would be done by market. Besides the post test, there's a roll call at the beginning of the morning, a roll call after lunch, and 2 random roll calls during the day to ensure that people are actually at their computers listening to the CD as well as taking the post test. And what the LSU CD department would like us to approve would be that those courses that meet those qualifications would be considered live CD for the purposes of the CD requirements that the board has, which is 20 hours for 2 years for dentists and 10 hours could be remote. But they would ask for those to count as live CD. We had a discussion about that in presentation, and we decided that we would recommend that to the full board, that would be acceptable. And I want to make another point too, since you guys went there, that from time to time we have people that are sick or ill, and they're recovering from stroke. Say, for example, we don't have their CE requirements. Maybe they can get to their office, they can't travel long distances to get their CE. And so, because there's a difficulty getting live CE to satisfy the requirements, this could be a solution for them that they could take what is actually a live course, but they're not being direct attendance, and still count for live CE for the purpose of them getting their requirements without them having to travel or medical hardship. And I think and LSU CDE makes those exemptions, or exceptions for those people that are less than 120 miles, but whose medical conditions can.
So they have to have a reason. And then what is the time? Could they do all their hours, or is it like limited to half of their 20 hours? I mean, is it?
We just said it would be considered live CDE, those courses for the purpose of considering that to be live.
They actually had a slide, the LSU CDE director, where they actually showed a comparison between a live course, a course that you are physically, like your butts in auditorium seat at LSU Dental School versus you're attending a course via, internet live conference, and you're 250 miles away in Shreveport or Monroe. And it was actually more stringent than the person sitting in auditorium C in terms of having to take a test and pass it, having multiple attendance checks. And so they have a mechanism in place to make sure that that person is actually participating in the CE course.
So you're okay if they got all their hours that way? You would feel okay? I'm just asking, you should have a time limit, like a maximum? That's my question. Should we have a maximum of half the, and then if they have to go over a certain amount, then they have to approach the CE committee and have it approved by the CE committee?
That's something we didn't discuss. We could, I would say that.
Sorry, I'm not trying to put a ring on
No,
it.
no, it's a good discussion now. I would say that, when I first got on this board 6 years ago, the thought of that would give me shudder. No, you need to, your butt needs to be in the chair, attending a course in person. I've never, ever done that type of course. I do realize, though, that technology is such that is the face of CE in this world, and that is how education is being done, not just at the continuing education level, but even with dental school education and medical school education. So I think what LSU is attempting to do is to stay current in a competitive CE market, provide a service to dentists who need a CE, and I think at this point, I would be in favor of supporting what was proposed in the CE committee meeting.
And it's limited to LSU, so it's not going to open the door to
It's not
XYZ.
No, it's not limited. It's not limited, but it would meet certain language requirements that.
Rusty has a draft.
Currently, it says they need 20 hours of personally attended clinical courses. We would change it to 20 hours of personally attended or online video courses with verified attendance, several attendance checks during the presentation, and a post-attendance test.
And I think there was an interactive component.
The ability to ask questions.
Oh, that's right, interactive, that's right, okay.
Answer questions.
It should say live.
So if another CE
Online
provider.
live.
Not a webinar.
Online live, interactive video course with verified attendance, several attendance checks during the presentation, and a post-course test.
I'm just afraid that, we have it so generalized that company ABC is going to offer the same course at half the price. You pay your money and you get CE, and then there's no way that we're going to have any.
We don't know. They'll really
They're
check.
really
They'll
doing
really
it. And that's just why, I mean, I'm just
But you can be at a conference and you sound asleep during a lecture, and at the end of the lecture, you say,
Absolutely.
what was the code? I was asleep, but he said what the code was, and you write it on your paper.
100%.
It's got 2 hours to see.
Absolutely.
Or you can be at a course and the person sitting next to you is watching a movie on their iPad. So I think that the reality of all continuing education, whether you're a dentist or a lawyer or an MD or whatever, there is some amount of ethics and self.
If you want to cheat the system.
Yeah, there's
It
always.
doesn't matter what.
I would just say that what the LSU is proposing is more stringent than anything I've heard. But also, Maria, to answer your question, if someone wants to get CE approved in that manner, they're going to have to submit something to the CE chairman, committee chairman, to say, hey, this is course.
Otherwise, it won't go
So
through.
then that they send it to me first.
Right.
I mean, if you have the items that Rusty had said a few minutes ago, multiple verified attendance checks, et cetera, I would just, see if the course included all of those things, and then if it matched the rule, then I would bring credit, treat everything the same. That's all.
Any more discussion? So we have a motion then on the floor perhaps to accept the rule change. I guess that would be a rule change.
Right, it would be a rule change.
Would you mind if, just repeating what the hourly breakdown, the change is going to bring it out now?
Hourly breakdown would be the same. The only difference is that it personally attended would include, if you do it on online interactive video course.
Right.
With live video course.
So that would just get lumped in with.
That would be lumped in with.
Okay.
So essentially, Bill, the end result, if someone wanted to, and they fit the parameters, like LSU specifically only offers this to someone that lives more than 120 miles away.
Right.
But that doesn't necessarily have to be the parameter for every company that offer that. The ODA could do something different, NODA could do something different, but the consequence could potentially be that a licensee could get all 20 clinical CE hours through this method and not have to attend.
I don't see a problem with it. Just anecdotally, I would tell you I have several patients in Baton Rouge that go to medical school in Shreveport, and they spend half their time in Baton Rouge because they take all their courses, watch them all on podcasts at 2 times, 3 times speed, show up, take a test, and leave again. So it's the way the world's going. It's crazy.
Any other discussion? So we have a motion. All in favor? Opposed?
The last item, my understanding, well, there's two more. The American Academy of Dental Hygiene courses, the American Academy of Dental Hygiene is a continuing education verifier, for want of a better term.
Well, American Academy of Dental Hygiene is like the, I guess, the American Academy of General Dentistry. And they do certified courses. Currently, if CE courses, currently, board only accepts CE courses that are given by or certified by the ADA or its component parts, the AGD, and a couple of in LSU, dental schools, and the American Academy of Dental Hygiene wanted to be included in that group. I understand that the American Academy of Dental Hygiene actually certifies courses for the American Association of Dental Hygiene. So Dr. House has looked at the guidelines or the requirements that the American Academy of Dental Hygiene has to approve continuing education courses.
Much like, PACE and CERT, they have requirements as well, not as stringent as PACE or CERT, but more stringent than the American Dental Hygiene Association. And so, based on what we understand at this time, it appears that they meet qualifications for us to accept their recommended course or certified courses for satisfaction of the hygiene CE requirements. And we could always change that if we find that there's an issue with that.
So this would require a rule change, and I believe that we voted last time to change the rule that the specific language, adding the American Academy of Dental Hygiene as one of this course certifiers is on page 24 of your board book if you want to look at it. Otherwise, if we can have a vote to approve the language, then we'll go forward with the procedure of changing the rule.
So we have a motion to accept the rule change as written on page 24.
I'll make a motion.
Second. All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
And then on page 49, we have it says page 49.
I got the pages wrong. I put the wrong version of the agenda on there. It's page 26 is where the minutes are.
The meeting minutes from the last CE committee meeting in November 30th, 2018.
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes. A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion
That's
passes.
the CE committee.
Awesome. Ad hoc committee, yeah, the ad hoc committees. So So the nominating committee had a meeting this morning, and my report is that because of the fact that Dr. Ricky Willis is no longer on the board, and he was our vice president, we nominated someone to take his place, and that person is Patty Hansen. And so we need to have some discussion on this, or how does this work?
So, yeah, we could have discussion. The nominating committee is recommending that we keep Dr. Smith as president, make Ms. Hansen vice president, Dr. House as secretary.
I have a question. First, I think it's a wonderful nomination. I've been working with her for years. Now, just as a little bit of discrepancy in the information is that she has another year on her
She
term.
does.
Y'all were mistaken this morning. She got another term.
I'm the only one who thought my term ended this year. Y'all
So-
I need to find out if there's a.
So my question is, does she automatically become president, or is that something that's voted on?
It's not how it's voted. You know, typically the vice president does move into the president's spot, but it's not automatic. It is.
I just want that to be clear that, when my constituents talk to me.
So, you know, we'd have to have a motion, I think.
I have a motion on the floor to accept the nomination of Patty Hansen to be the vice president.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Wonderful.
Congratulations.
Could we also get a motion regarding the signatures on our bank accounts since the officers have changed?
I'll make a motion that we change the signatures on our bank account since we have a new officer.
It's not on the agenda, but it's part and parcel of adding new.
We need a motion to amend the agenda.
Okay.
I make a motion that we amend the agenda to include a motion to change the signatures on the bank account.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it.
I make a motion that we amend the signatures on the bank account to include our new vice president.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. And last, I guess we need a motion for approval of minutes from November 30th, 2018 committee meeting, page 20.
I make a motion that we approve the minutes from the November meeting.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it.
Now they can go on the website.
That's right, now they can go on the website.
Okay, so new business and any other business which we have before our board, discussion of NYU, Laguna Health, AEG, program affiliation in Louisiana.
There's a brochure that was given to me on page 30 if y'all want to see it. Otherwise, I'll turn it over to.
Thanks, Russ. Thanks again for having me to present. I was here, I think it was a couple years ago, 2016, about. And basically what we did then was try to amend the State Practice Act to have where a restricted license for a resident can be given to an LSU, of course, an LSU resident, or we would like it to say, and/or a CODA-approved, accredited advanced education in dentistry program. So the reason we wanted to do this, we're now have an affiliation agreement with Daughters of Charity in New Orleans, and we will have a general dentistry program, AGD PGY1 program, starting July of 2020, basically. To do that and to recruit, we would like to be able to recruit from all over the country. And we would like for those kids to be able to have a restricted license to practice while they're in their PGY1 programs. Of course, if we don't have that, they'll have to have the unrestricted license, and that's not a problem. But it opens the aperture if we can have, just like if they're going to LSU dental school as in a resident, they can have a resident permit. I've talked to Henry at the dental school where we actually want to embed one in a program at the dental school. It's more positive this right now, and we're still working toward that goal because they do not have an AGD program. So we're going to recruit heavily at LSU School of Dentistry. That's my alma mater too. So I'm going to be very, very active in that. We're going to do lunch and learns and try to bring those kids into our programs across the country, not just in Louisiana. So basically, that's what this is about. It's really changing the restricted license to allow not only LSU residents, but any program that's code accredited to be able to obtain the resident permit or resident license.
Just to refresh everybody's memory, the current rule says that if you're doing a residency at LSU, you can come from out of state. You don't need to get a full license in the state. You can just come to LSU. LSU vouches for you, and you can get what's called a restricted license, where you don't have to take the test. You don't have to do any of that. Just LSU vouches for you. You can't do any dentistry except in LSU. But this restricted license is, under the current rule, limited to LSU. Only LSU can get, their residents can get restricted licenses. NYU would like to start a residency program and have the ability of getting restricted licenses for their residents instead of having to go through the process of getting a full license.
Correct. Correct. And again, it's not to it's not really just NYU Langone. This would open it up to anyone who would want to put a residency program in Louisiana. Don't think that's going to happen. We have about 450 residents across the country. Most AGD and pediatric dentistry. That's the biggest ones that are in health centers. Some are embedded in dental schools. So it's really just to open the aperture to recruit. If they go through, if a young professional comes from a dental school outside of Louisiana, goes through this program with a restricted license, if they go back to their home state or wherever, then that's fine. If they choose to stay and practice in Louisiana, of course they have to get the unrestricted license at that point.
Dr. Renato came and spoke to the board, I think a couple of years ago.
It's about 2 years ago.
I think the board was not inclined at the time to make any change. But now they're about to start the program.
I have a question. Is this program open to non-U.S. dental school graduates as a path for them to get
We do have international students that apply. It's really up to the state, though. So if the state doesn't allow it into this program, then we wouldn't put an international grant in this program.
I don't understand that. You mean the state board of dentistry has to approve that?
Or the state, yeah. I would think it would be the state board.
You talking about the program administrator or us?
It would be here, Louisiana. As far as NYU Langone, we get permission to accept a number of international graduates, okay? There's certain states that allow that for them to go to those programs. So we place them there if they get accepted. They still have to apply just like any other applicant. So if Louisiana, I really don't know that answer. If Louisiana says international graduates cannot go to any of these programs, that's fine. That's no problem.
We accept anybody that LSU is accepted.
Right. So if LSU gets a resident who graduated from somewhere outside the country, we accept them as a limited resident. Restricted license. So this would be the same thought then if someone was graduated from another country?
That's right.
But the international student would not be able to get a full license until they took a clinical license.
No, we're
talking correct.
Okay. Oh, and then you need a two residency.
Yes.
And our AGD program is 1 year with the option of 2 years. So if they have to go 2 years, they could either go, in this case, they would stay here, or they have to apply again for that second year. They can move to another health center or.
Well, for an international student, you will go to dental citizenship.
Sure.
You need 2 years of a U.S. residency to get a license in America. So that would be a way for them to come to this country, just like an LSU student. But
yeah, I mean, that's really not the discussion as far as what I'm bringing to the table, but that's probably
well,
true.
I'm asking now, because in a year you'll have an international student. We'll be talking about should we accept them as a licensee because they can't get licensed under other rules.
But can't you get that now if they go to another program somewhere else in the country?
For 2 years.
Yeah, for 2 years, yeah.
What would be the difference for one of your applicants who's applying to the AGD program? Why wouldn't they just be eligible as a new licensee if they've graduated an accredited dental school and passed?
They are. That's what they are, absolutely. This change doesn't change us moving forward with the program. All it does is gives us more opportunity for more kids to come, or for an LSU graduate not to have to take the board if they're not going to practice in Louisiana. There's different reasons for that.
Well, if we're moving towards the single clinical licensure exam, and right now Louisiana accepts the ADEX exam, which is accepted in like 45 or 48 states. I'm just not sure why we need to change the Dental Practice Act. How does that limit you on your applicants if they're all taking a board exam and they can go anywhere, regardless of whether or not they do
For one reason, it would be financial. They wouldn't have to even take all that. They would just apply for the restricted license. That would be the main reason.
But they're going to have to take a clinical licensure exam at some point to get licensed.
Absolutely, they're not, maybe not here.
In New York, people.
But it's the same test.
It's the same test.
The ADEX test is taken in New York.
In New York, you don't have to take this last year.
But there are a couple of other tests, like RED, license doesn't get any credits, they don't give the ADEX test. And so we don't accept them, but because many states accept all the testing agencies, the ADEX test is accepted in 48 jurisdictions. So they may come from a state where RED is the main test.
So, I think the last time that you were speaking to us, Dr. Joe, wasn't it in a rulemaking committee meeting? Or was it?
It was, I did go to that.
Well, is there a reason why we're not discussing that in a rulemaking committee meeting instead of before the entire committee?
I thought, I mean, from my perspective,
if you want to send it to the rulemaking committee, that you know, we can do that. So.
I think that's that happened last time. It went from here to the rulemaking. It's a little bit more clear cut this time because at that time we didn't have any program. We were still looking for that. Now we actually are starting. So we have an affiliation agreement with the health center to actually put the program, you know, embedded at that health center. So there will be residents there.
So, and what health center?
What health center?
This is going to be Daughters of Charity in New Orleans.
So they will practice in that facility?
Correct. And there will be faculty there. There will be our faculty, credentialed. It's code accredited. It's the same as any. It'd be the same as LSU's GPR program, except this is an AGD program, and it's the sponsoring institution for CODA is NYU Langone Hospitals. This is like they do their clinicals at Daughters of Charity for this one.
And how many students a year are you talking?
Well, we haven't gotten approved yet, but it looks like we want to be 4, but we're going to start out with 2. That's how we're going to get it approved.
And I think we talked about this a couple of years ago. Why was it NYU couldn't partner or didn't want to partner with LSU School of Dentistry? Since they don't have
NYU will be happy to partner with LSU.
I think LSU has stated they can't do it. There's some sort of prohibition that keeps them from doing that.
But those discussions right now with the dean are still ongoing, and that could happen. I can't say that it will, but we certainly would love to we partner with other dental schools.
So I mean, one action you can do is to send this back to the rulemaking committee for further consideration. But I thought, maybe this, from the initial contact, 2 years later, that you should come to the board. I mean, if you're not interested in doing anything, you can just say no, or you can pass a rule today. So beyond.
I'm just saying.
I would like to refer this to the rulemaking committee so we can have a more in-depth discussion, and if we have a lot of literature for us to review. I know that we've got this thing here, but something, not just a promotional flyer.
Absolutely, and I can send whatever information that is requested.
And I'd also like to, because I get the impression that things have changed since the last time we had this discussion, so I'd love to hear from Dr. Grimion. And as always, with any rule change, sometimes there are unintended consequences that we don't anticipate or think about.
Absolutely.
And so I think further discussion would definitely be a great idea, because it does seem like things are changing, your program is now in place. And
Sure.
It wasn't 2 years ago. It
No,
wasn't
we did
theory.
not have we did not have an affiliation agreement 2 years ago. We do now. So the programs, it's going to happen. It's just whether they need a restricted or unrestricted license. Some, even if the restricted license is there, some could choose to get the unrestricted license. That's up to them. It's really strictly up to the resident.
Do we need a motion to put it to rulemaking, or do we just
No.
just table it? Okay.
Board President, Mr. Board President, you want to just send this to the?
Yes, yes. We don't need a motion.
No, unless there's an objection to it.
More discussion?
I was just gonna add, as a freshman and lacking any historical perspective here, my little board's not working or whatever, I'd like to have something in writing. I mean, I'm, before we vote on it, I want to see what we're doing. So, anyway, that was my comment. So, I'm in favor of talking about it.
A lot of champions.
Congratulations.
I think you just got yourself a nomination
That's
for
right.
the rulemaking committee.
It's how hard to go.
I don't recall any
Thank you. Okay, next, we're going to have a discussion. Next, we have a discussion regarding dental sealants.
So we got a call from Sean Butler with
Oral health program.
the oral health program. The oral health program, they get some federal funds to do sealants. And they're,
Oral health.
what was it?
Coalition?
I think that's what it is. She's the oral health program manager with it.
With the oral
Who
health.
is she?
Department of Health.
Oh,
She's in department.
And so they're concerned that they're having a difficult time with these federal grants because hygienists can't do sealants without direct supervision from a dentist. And they're telling us that we're the only state that requires hygienists to have direct supervision by a dentist to do sealants. And so Dr. Smith, when I got this complaint when we got this complaint, I spoke to Dr. Smith. He asked me to talk to the LDA and see what their position was on it. So I spoke to Mr. Blackwell. And Mr. Blackwell, do you have something to say?
I will. The main thing, first of all, the Oral Health Coalition is a group of mostly nonprofits, but some practitioners that is kind of coordinated with the Department of Health, but it's basically an organization with an interest in improving oral health in Louisiana. And some of those folks are very interested in the sealant program. Ms. Butler basically is the one who writes the grants and kind of coordinates that program. She and the current president of the Oral Health Coalition did come before the LDA one time. I've heard that they are claiming they've done this multiple times. No, they came to the Council on Government Affairs once, explained they were having difficulty getting enough dentists to participate, and they had hygienists ready to do the sealants in the schools, but they needed more dentists. We have offered to help them find dentists, and every time, according to my assistant in that body, that she's gotten a call, she's helped them out and found a dentist to work with them. So just kind of lay that out there that the problem may not be as bad as they lay out, but nonetheless, there certainly are a number of states who don't have this requirement. Dr. Marty Garrett was the chair of the CTA at the time that they came and presented, and the council basically listened politely and said, we're really not sure we're on board with this. We like what you're trying to do, but don't think we really would be supportive of a rule change. And he can elaborate a little bit more as to the council's reasons.
Thank you, Gary, for the nice introduction when I walked in. I'm not sure Steve would agree with that. But it is good to see y'all again because Rusty can attest to this. You know, a year or so ago, we were told that we couldn't be friends, or at least in the public sector. You know. But basically, I'll be brief with this. I'm a little disappointed that we don't have representation from the oral health group, because I would love to kind of once again discuss it. I will tell you this: the LDA is surely, as you are as a state board, very sensitive to access to care. And certainly understand that we can certainly continue to improve that. Our concerns with non-supervised placement of sealants, I narrowed it down to 5. Claudia, feel free to kick in. I visited with Rob De La Rosa about this, and Rob got on his soapbox for a while. Yeah, and of course he and I go we go way back with that. But Kimberly, you too. But the 5 concerns that the CGA had in 2015 haven't changed. Our first thought is clinical exam by a dentist to determine if decay is present or if it's a okay. Also an x-ray, radiographs, which I'm not sure, and that's why I wanted this other group to be here, I'm not sure they were going to take x-rays prior to placing the sealants, which a lot of times, it may not stick, but you take an x-ray and there's decay there. So those 2 things, the clinical exam, radiographic evidence, along with the clinical exam to make sure no decay was present. Obviously supervised placement, make sure it's done properly. So you're not causing occlusal problems, because we're talking about permanent teeth here. The big key, and Rob De La Rosa said he didn't mind me using his name several times, is the lack of follow-up after they're placed. All of y'all that do place, I'm a periodontist, so I don't place, but I follow the system enough to know that if one starts to break down, then you've got a food trap there, which obviously would be more potential for decay. And then another thing that's kind of interesting, and this may be is the LDA is big on parental consent prior to any treatment, and based on the history of some of this movement, that was not always obtained. So that's our 5 big concerns. Follow-up after the treatment would be key, and making sure. I certainly think, I didn't say this to start with, sealants are certainly a proper treatment. We've got from the Academy of Pediatric Dentistry, from the ADA, we've got an article that just recently was in the JADA that definitely think it is good clinical practice. If they come back and this is kind of a personal aside, if some funds are available, I think a better direction would be helping us fluoridate some communities, because you certainly get the bang for the buck there. And then, we've got other, with Action for Dental Health on a national basis, helping with like ER referrals, where, if someone does go to take a child to an emergency room, about all the MD can do there is antibiotics. Well, if we've got some system set up that, because the providers are there, that is not an issue. Just like Ward said, the few times they have said, hey, we'd like to have, we can get dentists there. People will do it gratis. I mean, we all do it in our office that way. So, so that's kind of where the LDA is. Any questions? Like I said, I'm very disappointed they're not here. If they come back, if they approach you again, I'll be more than happy to come back.
It seems like we need to have them come so we can have a discussion about it. Just to specifically address.
Call an email.
And
didn't get a response.
We're going to defer this conversation until the next time that they can come. In the meantime, I would ask, could we find out what other states are doing, and if their assertion is in fact accurate or not accurate?
There are a few moving in that direction, I'll be honest with you.
Oh, I mean, I know there are states that allow sealant programs. It's talked about at every AAPD meeting that I go to. But there are nuances as to how those are allowed. There's concerns about funding and how those are paid for. So I'll give you a scenario. If you do a sealant program in a school and it's paid for by a grant and it doesn't come out of Medicaid dollars or patients' private insurance dollars, that's different than if it is paid for by Medicaid, because what happens in the Medicaid population is Johnny goes to school, Johnny gets sealants, mom probably signed a permission slip, didn't know Johnny was getting sealants. If Medicaid gets billed, and then Johnny goes to his dentist 2 months later, myself, Dr. Caldwell, and all 4 of the sealants are gone because they were not placed well.
Well, there was decay anyway.
And there was decay anyway, and then you've got to tell mom, hey, your Medicaid printout says that somebody billed for sealants 2 months ago, and I don't see any sealants on your child's teeth. So it would be in your child's best interest to have those sealants properly done, but guess what? Your Medicaid frequency limitations don't allow for that. You can't get sealants again, or you have to wait 24 months. And parents then get upset with their dental home provider instead of going back to the school and saying, hey, I want the sealants redone. Like, there's no recourse. And so that would be just one of the issues that I would ask about if she was here. I'd like to know more about what's the funding source, and you know, and then, like I said, Aaron, I'd love to know what other states are doing.
And I'm glad you brought that, because my final word was we fully support the concept of the dental home. And I'll be more than happy to come back and do the historical process with you. Thank you. Any other questions?
I'd just like to make a comment that I'm not really sure where it's getting the information that we're the only state that you can't do that. I don't know if she's basing that on access and direct access. I really don't know, because I know we're not the only state that, we have not a lot, there's 42 states that do have direct access. But, you know, I hate being put in groups where we're the last one or the worst one. So I'm not sure either. I haven't spoken with her, but I'd like to know.
I'm not sure how accurate that is.
Right.
She did, I mean, I'm going by the information
Right, that's
she
what
gave
she told
me
you.
in June.
So, yeah, I would, you know, want to try to make sure that we could get accurate information.
Yeah, Patty, one thing, and Claudia mentioned, a lot of it is with restrictions, like some of it is they have to have had an exam within 9 months or something, so just the blanket saying 42 states allow it, there's
I
other,
agree.
there's
Yeah, I
other,
think you have to be real careful where you get that information.
Right.
I agree.
Your
And I
state
wonder-
may be like Minnesota.
And I wonder too if it was from a federal program where the same rules apply. You know, I'm not sure about that either.
Yeah, just a federal grant, we still have to, dentists would still have to, and hygienists would still have to follow the same rules as the state.
Can we ask her to attend the next meeting so we can help?
We did ask her to attend this meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you, Martin.
yes, sir, thank y'all, appreciate y'all. Even you. I'm an old Boy Scout.
Next is the discussion of adding multiple choice rule update anesthesia questions to the rule application.
So we discussed this in CE committee. We forgot to bring that up in the report. In CE committee, for the November board meeting, we felt like it would be nice to add to the dentist application some multiple choice questions on topics that a lot of people are getting wrong, or new topics, and make the dentist or hygienist answer the questions. Now, if they get it wrong, they keep going until they get it right. It's going to be multiple choice, but just to inform them of certain things. And so we looked into how much it would cost, and it was $8,700 for the IT person to put that onto our renewals. $8,700, yes. So the CE committee said they thought that would be a good idea. And so unless this board, we don't really need a motion for it, but unless the board, people on the board think it's a bad idea, it would be nice to discuss it and see what people think.
Is that a one-time fee or is it?
It's a one-time fee, right?
So when you make changes, it's going to?
It should be okay, yeah. Basically, he said, he set up a question bank of 10 questions. If a dentist has an anesthesia permit, we'll throw some anesthesia questions in there. You know, force them to see any rule changes. We're trying to keep them, trying to help them out.
These would be items that people have trouble complying with as far as the law is concerned. More people have trouble with certain things. So it's an attempt to address the knowledge base of the applicants when they review, since they don't take the jurisprudence exam all over again each time.
So an example question would be, are you required or not required to have an EKG machine? If you
Right.
administer oral moderate.
Right, exactly. That's the sort of question right here.
Am I required to use sport testing?
No requirement.
Am I required to report
The
testing?
weekly
I
weekly
use
sport
sport
testing.
testing, you know, I would make it very specific, that way they.
Dr. House, you wanted to add something to the agenda. It had to do with when a dentist is in a practice, treats somebody, and leaves the practice. Did you want to do that today?
Yes, we
You're
did.
thinking about doing that.
We're thinking about, we've had a couple cases here where someone has been practicing at a particular location as a dentist. And then after they've left employed that particular practice, they go work for another practice. And then there may be a complaint made regarding the work that was done by this dentist while they were employed at a certain practice, at the first practice. Sometimes there would be guarantees, either oral or written, as to the success of the treatment that was rendered. Then there's a question then, when the treatment fails, the licensee would say, well, that was really the prior practice that was responsible, not me. And then the practice would say, no, that was the dentist that was here doing the treatment, not the practice itself. And so we think we may need some sort of clarification perhaps that maybe when you have someone that's in your employ, that you're responsible or co-responsible for some of these complaints that are being issued, because sometimes the member of the public, the complainant, is not able to get any sort of response because everybody says somebody else's fault. We've got a lot of those.
So before there's any discussion, we need to amend have a motion to amend the agenda to discuss Dr. House's issue.
The agenda to discussion. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carries. Continue.
So now I think we just want to talk about maybe that we need to think about making a rule change or specifying, or in some way, it may not need to be any change. We just may need to inform the people that are employing another dentist exactly what it is that they're liable for. in some
Yeah,
way.
what if there's a guarantee, we had a case where there was a dentist who, patient goes to the practice where there's a guarantee, they guarantee that if the crown fails, that they'll replace it within a certain amount of time. Dentist leaves that practice, patient goes to the practice and they say, well, that Dr. X did it. Patient goes to Dr. X and Dr. X says, well, the practice got paid for it, go to the practice, and they're bouncing back and forth between the two, and it's a problem. So
It'd be interesting to see what some of the other states might be doing, because I would imagine this is, with all the, a lot of these seem to be related to franchise dental centers and things like that, where people are kind of coming and going, and it'd be interesting to see what's going on in Mississippi, maybe some other Texas, things like that.
Can I review something? I called Berkeley this week, but I'm still confused. I thought that it was not within the Dental Practice Act to offer guarantees. And you're telling me that you can offer guarantees.
I'm aware of no prohibition for a dentist offering a guarantee.
That's what it is. I thought maybe we used to be that way, but I lost track.
I'm unaware of any prohibition.
So would you just like ask the staff to investigate this, and so we can discuss it at, what would be the appropriate committee to discuss that?
Rulemaking committee. So we're going to have a rulemaking committee for the NYU thing, and so we could also discuss this issue.
May I suggest that the person who signs the guarantee is responsible? Either the practice owner or the practitioner, but whoever signs the guarantee.
It might not be signed, it might just be, hey, you know.
It might be an implied thing, or it might be just a matter of,
Well, if
hey,
it's
the
implied,
dentist.
then it's not a guarantee.
Well, but somebody goes in and pays $900 at some place, and the dentist's not staying in, and the patient goes back, and now the guy's gone. The patient says, well, I want my money back. It's like, well, who's going to give a refund? Who's going to make it right?
Again, freshman question here. My understanding is that we don't get involved with fee disputes or cases similar to this. Like, he didn't do good. I want, we don't get involved, is that, am I right there? Is that
Pretty
what
much,
you're-
those things, but we get a lot of those complaints, and it's almost like, we have had some situations where they filed a complaint, and they said, well, look, the guy gave the money back, so he took care of it, whereas another one said, no, it's their fault. And even though we don't get involved in those things, we at least need to talk about it somewhat.
And I assume
Make
if
sure we're clear on
if we
that.
see it, obviously a habitual problem. with
That
this
was
guy.
going to be my point. Yeah, that was going to be my point.
Okay.
If it's something that's happening over and over and over again, then maybe that implies that there really is a problem there.
And sometimes it is really a substandard care issue. In other words, they're giving the money back because it was a substandard care. And so,
But if it's a substandard care issue,
It is that-
it's the dentist who left that is on the hook, not the practice.
that's not correct. That's right. But that's how we get involved.
Any more discussion? Okay, moving right along, discussion of the open meetings law, including emails to former board members.
Just like to, just a point of order, Ted, if you will. Did you actually ever take a vote on the anesthesia multiple choice on the applications? Or
We didn't need to do a motion for that, we can just do it, we didn't do a motion.
Okay, then for clarification purposes, was that on anesthesia application renewals or license application?
License application.
License. Thank you.
Okay, discussion of open meetings law, including emails from your board members.
Just a reminder, only do board business on your board email address, and don't do anything but board business on your board email address. And keep in mind that we're subject to the open public records law, so anything that you say can one day come to light. So just, be professional when you use the board email. Mr.
Can I make a
Nolan.
comment? I have a pet peeve. When we get an email, we're not supposed to delete them ever.
Right.
I've been asked, maybe I'm in it longest, I've been sued twice as a board member, and the first thing they're asking is for an email, and if you erase something, that looks bad. Just to let everybody know that. So if you say, or do you need a hotel room, and then everybody responds to that, I have to save that email for the rest of my life, that you didn't want a hotel room. So please, don't send me that information. Don't reply all and say, no, I don't need a hotel room. Or, oh, good idea. It's like, I gotta open it because I see it, when I see my emails, I open them. I respond all the time right away. I gotta read it, and then I gotta store it. I don't wanna do that every time for the junky emails. So please, don't send me an email unless it's to me about something in board business, and I'm supposed to respond to it. Please. I talk about this every year. It's just ridiculous.
Okay, next.
Go ahead.
Now, being a committee chair, there are things that need to get done. And this open meeting thing, none of this is a secret agenda, the information. I just need to contact the people on my committee and just discuss things. And I can't wait every quarter and have a meeting here. We can't do it by the board portal email.
We could probably address that because we had a lot of discussion about that last year. Because we were having some phone conferences and then we had to quit doing it. And maybe.
Well, I don't want a phone conference. I can contact each person individually, just say, look, I need you to do this part.
Right.
If we're researching something.
That's okay.
Information's fine.
Okay.
Disseminating information is perfectly fine.
It's when the problem arises if you have a quorum and it's not been noticed and you're discussing it.
There are a couple of memos that worked on specific issues, but for new members, you do have to be conscious of two things: the open meetings law and public records law. Public records law really affects requests come from Rusty, but open meetings law is just generically stating that every public body is subject to an open meetings law, and that just as we're meeting here, the board as a whole, you announce the meeting before our notice, except for executive session, things are done before the public. Committees are likewise public bodies. Subcommittees are public bodies. The biggest chance in the reported opinion, the biggest occurrence in the reported opinions of when
when it becomes an issue is after the fact, someone challenges an action of a public body, and says they usurp the public meetings law by really making their decisions beforehand, and yeah, they met for a meeting, but they'd already exchanged all this correspondence and effectively had a walking tour on different vehicles to get around. The board members are very conscious of that, and at the committee level. Last year, the Attorney General's office, I don't know if they're going to repeat that, offered seminars for board members to go attend, and these are the assistant attorneys general, I guess, that cover public records requests and open meetings law. And they take a hypothetical, what if you want to talk about this? The reported opinions, I hate to give a legal opinion off the cuff, but I have in memoranda. Certainly you can do some communicating to make meetings efficient, but there's a strict prohibition to any deliberating or making decisions before you convene in an open meeting. So it's important that you reserve judgment and deliberation to when you get into the committee meeting or to the general board meeting. And if you have more specific questions, ask Rusty. I'll tell the lawyer as well as the dentist versed on that. And if it needs an outside opinion, you'll ask me to write a memorandum. Anything else? Next, discussion of the Tier 2.1 reports.
Just to remind everybody that Tier 2.1 reports are due May 15th. The new board members, these are reports that we file with the ethics, what's it, Department of Ethics? Board of Ethics, thank you. And it basically says how much money you've received from the state for the past year. The new members who are appointed this year don't have to fill them out for this May 15th. But for next May 15th, you will have to. And you'll have to report all the money that this board has given you, as well as any other money that you've gotten from the state, which would include Medicaid money.
Unless they were appointed before the end of the year, even if they were appointed December 31st.
Right, but none of these three new ones were appointed before the end of the year, so they don't have to file by May 15th. Mr. Bourget was appointed before the end of the year, so he does have to file for this year.
And do they have to do the sexual harassment thing?
That's right.
Private school and all that?
We'll be in touch with you about that every year. Every single year, you have to take an online ethics course from the state.
Just the ethics?
Just the ethics. And it's also recommended that you take the sexual harassment course every 3 years. But the ethics course is required. And if you're going to be driving here and getting reimbursed for your driving expenses, you also have to take the online driving course. Okay? So we'll get that set up for y'all, but y'all need to do that. Every calendar year, driving course and ethics course. Driving course, I'm sorry, driving course is every 3 years. Ethics course is every year.
And the driving that you emailed me for 3 years is up to the driving course.
But again, is all this written down somewhere?
You
You mentioned earlier a board book. I assume there is an actual book?
No, we put it on.
Oh, it's on, okay, it's digital, that's fine, I want to read it for myself. Is that okay?
Well, there's so many state rules.
Oh, yeah, I got that.
You'll remind them, right?
We'll remind you, there's so many little state rules, it's almost impossible to put them down into one place. But, yeah.
Yes, thank you.
My book's over here, I just call her. Yeah, when in doubt, call.
I just call her. I don't know the way.
Any other discussion? Next, discussion of board member training requirements.
Oh, that's what we just did.
Okay, good. Next, ratification of the contract between Louisiana State Board of Dentistry and Charlotte County.
Sure.
Motion to accept the contract between LSBD and our account, Charlotte County. Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Next is ratification of resolution to procure attorney contract, Tom Marcineau, Blanche Walker, Brandon Roberts, and also Celia Cangelos.
Did I see that requires individual votes for that?
If we need the board makes the motion and the second, and then if it's unanimous, say unanimous. If it's not.
They're separate resolutions, and so if you could just vote on
Can we
them.
get any update about the thing on the thing?
So I make a motion that we accept in total, both attorney contracts. Can I do that? Make a motion that we,
Yes.
okay. I make a motion?
Yes.
They accepted both of these resolutions.
Yeah.
Second. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Next, reports on investigations, educations, and litigation.
I make a motion that we go into executive session.
Is there any other issues that don't require the panel?
One of these things that we were going to do in executive session the dentist has asked it to be an open session. So why don't we handle that before we go into executive session?
Do we have to amend the agenda?
No, we don't have to amend the agenda.
Okay.
It's just
Okay.
Yes, so we're going to go ahead and have a motion.
No, we don't need a motion.